I'm Eric Newton, and this is The Together Show. We all know relationships take work, but what is that work, and how do we do it? As a former divorce lawyer, I've watched thousands of couples break up firsthand. Having seen the worst in relationships, I decided to try to help couples stay together. So on this show, we talk to real couples and find out what love really looks like.
You have to ask yourself, is our disagreement on this subject so fundamental that it's worth walking away from each other? And there has never been an occasion in our relationship where I felt that any one particular thing that we've disagreed on was worth, throwing this all away.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for listening. Today's episode is about political differences. We've all had major political differences with the ones we love, and that's arguably one reason why Thanksgiving visits home can be such a notorious challenge. Dealing with your crazy uncle and his views on the election is, as we all know, an eternal struggle. But what happens when those differences are right under your roof with your life partner? That's the question that we explore today. Erica and Theo found that they were on opposite sides of a political divide in this year's Democratic primary. They learned a lot about one another by exploring those differences, and we get to hear the whole story on today's episode. Now, this is part 2 of our interview with Erica and Theo, and in part 1, we heard about how their love affair began on the rebound. If you haven't heard that episode, you might want to go back and listen for context, but this conversation really does stand on its own. So with that, let's go to part 2 of our interview with Erica and Theo.
I guess I can say that we were having a rough time during the Democratic primaries. We were having a tough time politically.
Because one of you is...
One of us is a moderate, and one of us is very liberal.
Do you want to say who?
Why don't you guess?
Well, Erica, I think that you were probably voting for Sanders. Did I nail that?
I just want to know how you know.
Well, you just set me up. It was pretty obvious.
I was trying to be coy. Yeah. Theo is much more moderate, and I am, a bleeding heart liberal.
Yeah.
And it was rough in this house for a while. Yeah. It really was. We were at odds a lot.
It got to a point where I honestly would try to avoid having the conversations. At least I think we both universally disregard and dislike anybody who's on the Republican ticket during the primaries. But, I think there was sort of a fundamental disagreement that I think illuminates a lot about our character. That really sort of went to the core of us. At a certain point, it was no longer about the candidates or even the issues that were coming up in the election, but more or less about the fact that, as stated before, I'm someone who likes to sit with something.
If I may, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go there.
I think that it's so interesting. The thing that I love about Theo is also the thing that drives me insane about Theo.
As usual in relationships,
right?
Yeah.
And that is, for me, he can see all sides of an argument, or he sees all sides of a situation. He can see everyone's perspective.
Yeah.
So because he sees all the sides, he tends to not take a side. And I'm very clear about my positions on things, and I feel like it's very important to take a stand or have a stance on something, which isn't to say that you can't, be open to others' ideas and other opinions. But so I would really want him to take a side, take a stance, take a position about something. And for him, I don't think he was comfortable being so, certain or being so adamant about about taking a position, and that would just kind of irritate me more.
Well, but what I'm asking is the bigger question of this dynamic of you two having really challenging moments because I think you distilled it down to, Erica, you were taking positions and Theo, you weren't.
Right.
Is that what it was? Or was it that he was moderate and you were hyper? That's a unfair characteristic. Very liberal.
I think she wanted me to have a visceral emotional reaction to things, and I tend to not be that way.
Yeah, and
so it's not that you had political disagreements. That's not the issue.
I think that's probably the thing behind it, right?
Yeah, I think I have a very strong reaction to perceived injustice, and I want him to also have that same
to be angry about it
reaction when he sees injustice in the world. And I think that stems from my upbringing as a Jew. I mean, it's just kind of part of the Jewish narrative is, to do tikkun olam, to prepare the world, to seek to fix injustice, and so when he would kind of gloss over something, when I would tell him, oh, this happened, or did you hear Hillary did this, or or whatever, and he just doesn't have that same kind of like, oh, that's really messed up, and
that fact is continuing. I mean, he's still that way. Because the Hillary Bernie thing is completed now doesn't mean he's not still that guy.
Right.
So how is it now? Is it just the same, or have you guys worked out a new approach?
I don't know. I mean, I think that I understand her point in terms of what it is,
which is what you do.
Well, yeah. Because I think at a certain point you do kind of make concessions for the sake of your relationship, and I think that I understand what she's saying. It's not that what I am purporting to be true, that there are a lot of variables at play. It's just that I think that you're looking for an emotional response. Oftentimes, even regardless of whether I know the full
But I think I've just started to accept that I'm not going to get it. But also, and I've told you this, that I've learned so much from Theo about diplomacy.
Well, what about what he just did to you in that very moment, just now?
What did he do?
He just said he totally understood your side. And, he did his thing that he does in politics with you. Did it feel good?
That he said that he understands
your side?
No, he'll say that often. He'll say, I understand where you're coming from.
But isn't that the same thing that annoys you when he does it with a political opponent?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I don't hold it against him anymore. I know he doesn't mean any disrespect or any harm, and he genuinely does want to know how I feel, and he genuinely does try to understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So I trust that he is trying to understand, and that, I guess that's good enough for me.
Yeah. And then what about when you apply that he's doing that to, say, Donald Trump?
Well, sometimes we'll beef about that, because I'll pry and I'll ask more questions, I'll say, well, be more specific. Like, what do I really get him to try to be more specific about his opinions, because I don't know that you've admitted that you're not as forthcoming about your feelings about things. And I think it's because you don't want to rock the boat.
I think that's part of it. I think that the other part of it for me is that oftentimes, like you feel a certain way about a certain thing until you learn something new.
Yeah.
And you realize that not that your feeling was wrong, but you were angry about the wrong thing, or that you were, and so for me, it's, I've had some reversals like that in my life where I've been very quick to form an opinion, and then new information came to light that made me realize I was premature to make that call. And so,
but that's not true. See,
you don't think so?
The thing is we're always, the important thing is that it's normal to have an opinion, but then when you're presented with additional facts and you don't change your position, that's when there's a problem. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not sure that I agree that you were premature. I think that's what we start where we start. Well, we start from where we are, and then you can't know what you don't know. But when you're presented with new information, you have an opportunity to then take a different position.
I have a friend who's a colonel in the Army, and he's frequently saying the human experience is that we make decisions based on limited information. Mm-hmm. But we have to make decisions.
We have to.
And that, in fact, is his job.
Right.
To make decisions on limited information. And then change when new information comes in, if possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I had a professor in grad school tell me once that, or tell the class that when you're traveling to another country and you don't know their customs, that, it's okay to kind of rely on your limited or maybe slightly prejudiced notions of that culture, because it's just where you're starting. But once they show you differently, then you start to change. But so I guess I just always remembered that.
You have to be willing to do the change.
You have to be willing to adjust.
Mm-hmm. And to accept the new information rather than doggedly stick to the old
narrative. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been listening to conservative talk radio because I just went on a road trip, and I live in a liberal bubble in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, how interesting would it be to listen to Rush Limbaugh and all these other guys on the conservative AM driving through the middle of nowhere, and it's very entertaining to do that. And what's interesting is that they complain about the liberal agenda using nearly the same language that the left-wing media uses to complain about them, which is they refuse to see the facts.
Right.
Everybody's saying that about everyone else. And it kind of leaves you nowhere. I kind of don't know what to do with it because everybody's convinced that the other side isn't seeing the facts.
Right.
Right.
All it leaves me with is that, in fact, in that regard, they're both right. We need to see the facts and adjust as the new facts come in.
Yeah.
Be willing to digest them.
It's hard to find the facts anymore. It's where are the facts? It's they're often buried in places that we don't have access to or don't have easy access to. Whereas it used to be that our media, we could rely on our journalists to give us the facts, unbiased facts. And now we're learning that we really can't rely on our journalists for facts. So who do we rely on?
Yeah.
I still will trust the New York Times before some fringe online media outlet, only because I find that the larger outlets tend to, because of libel and fear of lawsuits, that they will they will go through everything that they have to verify what they're printing to avoid lawsuits, you know, that sort of thing. Whereas I don't know that, you know, some of these smaller fringe outlets have that level of accountability. I mean, there's some, you know, there's a lot of, you know, misreporting on the internet that, you know, misrepresentation of facts that are presented as facts that I find in both left and right media, like you were saying. Not always, but, you know, this goes to the core of our thing. Like, I tend to be a moderate. I tend to think that, like,
and he knows that I sometimes I wish that he was a liberal secretly. But
well, I mean, he is a liberal. He's a liberal.
I'm socially liberal.
He's a moderate liberal.
He's a moderate liberal.
But you're not dating somebody who's going to vote for Trump.
No.
Well, I mean, that's not even a moderate. That in my book.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that.
Is there a political opinion that a cognizably possible political opinion that if he took would be a deal breaker for you? And you don't have to name it, but I mean, would there be a limit? Or if he believed something, no matter how much you loved him, if you found out that he believed X.
If I were a Trump supporter, that would definitely be a deal breaker.
Yeah, I think so. I think if he was a Trump supporter.
I think it would be for me too, actually.
If she were.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would mean to you that the other was so out of touch with something fundamental to who you are that what are you doing?
Right.
Even if everything else was good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So knowing that, then, do you have some sensitivity around being honest about your real feelings about things ever, Theo?
I do. I mean, I feel like there are times when my opinion, you know, if I'm talking frankly about a situation, I might step onto the other side just to voice that point of view. Because I am a believer that, like, you know, people are entitled to their opinion, whether they're right or not. You know what I mean? Like, I think that our democracy is built on the idea that you should be free to express your opinion so long as it's not harmful.
Yeah.
You know, you know, and then also I think we both lived in red states, so we've been surrounded by opinions that we don't agree with and found a way to navigate those worlds. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that there are times when...
You tread lightly?
Yeah.
Does that feel inauthentic?
It feels like the thing I need to do to maintain my relationship, which is more important to me than my opinion of whether or not Bernie Sanders stood a chance to be elected president.
Yeah.
We have different opinions about it. And I think at a certain point, I had to be like, you know what? We both have our reasons for believing what we believe. And it is hard to say if either of us are right. Because in a way, we're kind of, you know, we're participants, but we're also definitely spectators in what's happening on the national stage.
Yeah, and that's the crux of sort of what annoys Erica, right? I mean, in some sense, he's kind of saying, I might have a view that you find detestable, but I'm just gonna keep it quiet because I love you. And you're sort of and you're allowing that silence to exist, probably. But there's a part of you that's saying, yeah, but if you have a view that I find detestable, I don't know if we can be together. Or maybe you're not saying that. Maybe you're saying you need to tell me.
I do say I want to know. You know, I do want to know. Mm-hmm. I encourage him to share with me, and he will. Maybe not at that moment, but he'll think about it and he'll come back to me with something.
Yeah.
And you know what I learned was very important to me was that he was extremely supportive of me being a Bernie supporter. So, if I wanted to go protest or go to a rally or do this or that, he was very supportive. Go do your thing, babe. Like, great sign that you made. Or, if you need to go to Philly, if that's what's in your heart, go do it. And so regardless of whether we saw eye to eye 100%, he understood that was really important to me.
Yeah.
And that was good enough for me. But it took a while for me to kind of realize that. But I was like, oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
But I do think, just to touch back to your question before, I don't know that there's anything that I believe that I haven't had the opportunity to share with her in some capacity. Because Lord knows we've spoken about every topic under the sun.
Yeah.
But I do think that where we've gotten into loggerheads about certain things that I realize are immovable rocks in terms of our thinking, I've learned to be very selective about what hill I want to die on. Because, I just think that, at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, is our disagreement on this subject so fundamental that it's, worth walking away from each other? And, there has never been an occasion in our relationship where I felt that any one particular thing that we disagreed on was worth, throwing this all away. All the things that we do have that work.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really what I was working my way towards. Thanks for saying that so clearly. So the last kick of this dead horse that I will make on this topic, Erica, is are you okay with that? Are you okay with him deciding not to die on that particular hill?
Yeah, because again, it's something that I'm learning from him, which is, that's an area that I struggle with. I want to climb on a lot of hills, and because I have a lot of passion in me, and sometimes I can't always control it, and so it's just, and I think it's kind of like a yin yang, and oftentimes why we choose the partners that we choose, because they have qualities that are a nice complement to ours. If I was with someone who was more like me in that, passionate about debate and loves to get into it and kind of, I'm not sure it would be very healthy. And I appreciate that he can be so thoughtful in moments when maybe I can't be so clear.
Yeah. And you inspire me to be more succinct in how I feel about something and to not hedge, if I have a feeling. And I think that some of this is just conditioning, as someone who partly is, I can blame it on how men are raised in society in general, and we're taught to repress our emotions, to be strong, which often means suppressing. But I think that, everything that I've learned that's helped me survive and get to where I am, I'm having to unlearn because it's blocking me from making the kind of growth that I want to make as a human. Yeah. And she's teaching me. She's showing me how to do that, and I really appreciate that about our relationship.
That's the greatest process of humanity. Huh?
Yeah. It's like, all this thing that I thought was true is, only true to a certain extent. And, particularly as someone who likens myself as being someone who's a creative person. Well, the genesis of creativity is really, how you feel about a thing. And if you can't tap into your emotion, then, you're creatively dead. So I think that in a lot of ways, it's like going back to school again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
Yeah, I guess there's just one thing that that does come to mind, and we were talking about race and having an interracial relationship, and Theo mentioned that he's the first Black man that I've dated. And something that came to mind was that, I think perhaps the reason that I was so standoffish the first time we met is because dating a Black man wasn't on my radar at all, because I grew up very Jewish, and I've always thought I would end up with a Jewish person, and I was only dating Jewish men for a really long time, and so it wasn't on my radar to consider anyone who wasn't, and I'm so glad that I did, because if I had limited myself to that kind of narrow box, I would have missed out on, like the greatest love of my life. And I hear a lot of women who have so many, requirements on their list for their partners, and what they should look like and what they should do, and I'm only attracted to this type of person, and I'm not attracted to this type of person. And I just want to encourage people to really open up their minds and throw out those lists and those notions of the person you think that you want to be with, because it's so great to be surprised, to let life surprise you, and be open to receiving that gift.
Oh, wow. It's so touching.
I don't even know how to follow that.
Don't bother. Well, let me follow it with a sincere comment, but probably a little lighthearted too. Would you convert, Theo?
Yeah, I would. I've actually thought about it. It's funny. I actually had the exact opposite reaction to when it comes to women I've been attracted to. I find that, and this is not something that I was even cognizant of until many years into adulthood, that many of the women I've been attracted to also happen to be Jewish. So when I found out that she was also Jewish, it made sense to me, as opposed to it being, the exact opposite.
But you love Jewish women.
I do. I don't know what it is.
Me too. I've always been into Jewish girls.
Yeah.
Funny.
I know.
Well, okay, guys, thanks for being on the show. I always like to close shows with a game of this or that.
All right.
So, kombucha or fresh pressed juice, Theo?
Kombucha.
Really? I thought you guys were going to do juice because it's so trendy right now.
It is, but I'm
not
never
a juice
really
person.
into it. Yeah.
Kombucha. Okay. All right. Batman or Superman, Erica?
No Man?
No Man. Wonder Woman? Or no, that's too easy.
Shira, maybe.
She-Ra or Wonder Woman?
Yeah, Shira, Princess of Power. Yeah.
Over Wonder Woman?
Yeah.
Theo?
Oh. I have to go with She-Ra because she lives on Eternia. And that just seems like a cool place to be.
You were going to go back to Batman or Superman?
Oh. No. I was asking.
Yeah.
I mean, we asked. It got to be the same question.
the same
It's
question.
got to be the same question. Oh.
You knew where she lived. That's pretty impressive. How about He-Man or Skeletor?
Skeletor.
Yeah.
He-Man.
Because he's good?
Yeah, he was just, he's good. He's good.
I've always been more drawn to the villain toys, and my mother she would try to balance it out because she thought that was maybe
Something was wrong.
Yeah, and I was like, well, if whatever will allow me to get more toys, I'm for it.
Well said. Okay. All right. Enlightenment or $1 billion, Theo?
I want to say enlightenment, but I think I would take the $1 billion.
If they were actually right here, you could take the enlightenment, push the enlightenment button, or...
I think I would go with $1 billion. I think.
Yeah, I would too. Definitely $1 billion.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because if I had $1 billion, then I could afford to spend the day meditating all the time, and I could, reach enlightenment. Oh my God.
I read today or yesterday about how J.K. Rowling was the first billionaire to drop off of the Forbes list because of how much money she's given away to things
Charity.
that she cares about. And God, if I had the resources to really dedicate myself fully to my passions, I feel like I could probably do some good in the world, and maybe I could seek out enlightenment with $1 billion. I don't know. Or, yeah.
Cool. All right. And if you had to die in the next 5 minutes or live for infinity, which one would it be?
Oh, man.
I'd peace out in 5 minutes. Absolutely. Living forever sounds like a curse to me, especially on a planet like ours that's dying.
I don't know. I don't think I could make the call to die in the next 5 minutes. So I would have to say eternity.
Yeah.
I always hold my breath when the eternity answer is given.
I saw a really interesting either or. It was a clip from Little House on the Prairie. And Michael Landon's character was talking to a young Todd Bridges character. And I guess the episode dealt something with race. Did you see this?
No.
But anyway, so Todd Wilson is talking to Michael Landon and sort of, explaining this incident that happened. And, he's being, understanding. And Todd Willis asks him, he's like, well, would you live 50 years as a white man or 100 years as a black man? Which would you choose? And the clip just sort of goes on. Michael Landon just sort of like, sort of thinking about that. But I just thought it was an interesting question because it's from a show from 30 years ago. But it's certainly a question that people are really talking about in terms of quality of life. And, is your life different fundamentally if you, based on your gender or based on your racial identity? And I guess many would argue that it is, I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's different based on everything.
Yeah.
But that's the one that's in clear contrast right now. 100 years of black man, that would be my answer.
Yeah.
30 years ago, maybe not, but right now.
Right now? Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Good time.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you so much.
That's it for our episode with Erica and Theo, folks. Thanks for listening. I wanted to mention that we posted the photo that Theo mentions in part 1 of this interview on our website. I forgot to mention that on Monday. So if you'd like to see that photo, you can check it out at our website, www.together.guide/podcast. If you liked what you heard on our show today, please subscribe to us on iTunes. It makes a big difference when you do that. And please also consider donating to our Patreon campaign. We're on a mission to crush shame, and every penny really does help because we've got more expenses than you could ever imagine. You can find our campaign at patreon.com/together, and I'll put that in our show notes. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to be on the show, please reach out to us via one of our platforms. You can find our website at www.together.guide. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/togethershow. Twitter and Instagram are both at together_show, or you can email me at host@together.guide. Our producer is Charlene Goto. Our web designer is Courtney Munna. Our art director and my one and only is Aubrey Pick. Thanks once again to my guests, Erica and Theo. Guys, it was good times. I can't wait to see you soon. That's all for today, folks. See you next time.